Hello everyone and thank you for joining me. Some of you that have been following me for a while already knows that disc fountain pens are one of my favorite fountain pens. So I am always excited when I bring them out to show them off and play with them. This particular disc fountain pen was recommended by one of my viewers some time ago when I reviewed the Jinhao 1001 Art Series disc fountain pen, because design-wise it seemed to look the same. So the chances that Jinhao used this specific Sailor F-9 as a source of inspiration were pretty high. Apparently the F-9 it's more of a vintage fountain pen nowadays, so finding it might be a little bit on the tough side of things, but if you ever get a chance to grab one and the price is right for you, I personally think it's a nice catch if you like disc fountain pens. My copy came advertised as a new old stock, and based on how it looked when I received it, I have to agree that most probably it was new old stock fountain pen. Shape-wise it is a little bit slender and more pointier at the end of the barrel than the Jinhao version, but lengthwise they are pretty much identical. The huge difference between them is that the F9 has a slip-on cap and the nib is, well, a more beautiful vintage Sailor steel nib. Slender as well, pretty long, and honestly much more beautiful to look at when compared with the Jinhao copy of the Lamy style nib they used. Nothing wrong with either of the nibs, they work just as fine, but presentation wise I think Sailor has the edge on that one. In hand I also have to admit that the Sailor feels very good. It feels very well balanced and like it was designed with the purpose of being held for long period of times, and I think I'll really be enjoying it during the Scribble today. The only downside that I could find is that originally it did not came with a converter or even with a cartridge. The converter that you see is something that I have added, actually better said, borrowed from one of my other Sailor fountain pens. I did not have an empty cartridge and I really wanted to use the ink that I plan to use today. So I really needed a converter for it and I was not really in the mood for buying another one. So in the end, overall a very simple, clean disc fountain pen with a very minimalistic design to it. Built to be enjoyed and not necessarily looked at. So let me jump into inking this beauty and let's see what I can do with it. And since today I am using a Sailor fountain pen, I thought this was the perfect opportunity to try my one and only ink that I have from Sailor, the Yurameku Kyokkou, also known as the Frozen Sky, which is very odd because Google translates it as shimmering aurora actually, which in a way kind of makes more sense to me by looking at the ink on the paper than the frozen sky. Regardless, it is a beautiful ink that I never actually got a chance to use it for drawing, so this should be exciting, I hope, maybe. I'm really curious to see how it shades and how it will behave on the Fabriano paper that I have, and hopefully will work out okay for, well, my style of scribble. The fountain pen in itself worked out very well, there were no issues during the fill up or the writing portion. This ink seems to be a little bit of a perfect match, so far at least. Ink flows out of the nib very nice, and on the wet side of things actually, on the normal side of the nib that is. On the reverse, the nib is slightly more scratchier, but not in a bad way, just perfect for working some fine details as you draw. Another pleasant thing about the nib is that it does have a little bit of a bounce to it. Not actually flexible, just bouncy. It's very happy and very willing to just start bending at the slightest pressure of the hand. One thing that I noticed as a probably issue is how the camera captured this ink. Seems to be on the light side of things. Hopefully we will be able to see the lines better as I draw, and hopefully after I edit the video the lines or the ink will stand out a little bit better. But as you can see, it can layer quite a bit and give some interesting random shadings. It looks like I'm setting myself up for some unknown results on this one. Basically, I'll probably just go with the flow, and whatever comes out, that is the art that I was planning to make to begin with. Speaking of that, let's not delay the inevitable for too long and let me dive into the scribble already. Because of how the ink was behaving, I realized that it will be probably hard to control, so I decided to start without any kind of plan and just putting some hairballs on the page, and as I was building it, trying to make some sense out of them and try to work some details on them. I tried to keep my mind as free as I could to maximize on the randomness, but well, I might have failed. At least let's just say that I tried. I started to draw on the reverse side of the nib because of the finer line. Did not want it to commit to something specific by using the normal side while I was trying to find a shape to cling on to. And that turned out to be a good call because the normal side of the nib turned out to be quite a gusher even on this paper. I mean, it dumped ink on the page like it was nothing. I actually ended up refilling the fountain pen a second time and used it all up the second time as well. Because of that, I had to rethink how I wanted to approach the drawing. So I went from scribbling a scribble to more of a painting a scribble, basically treating the pen more like a pen brush rather than a fountain pen because I was not able to get clear, crisp lines with this ink. And as I already mentioned, I tried to keep my mind free of any kind of thinking, but I did fail a little bit because it quickly evolved into another silly, raggedy robot with two boxes for its eyes and a weird ball with an antenna sticking out of it and, I guess, a mouth. Don't stick your hand in it, looks kind of painful. And obviously it had to end up in a weird pose as well, looking into different directions. I kind of like that, and it almost made me think that this raggedy thing was more agile than I originally anticipated, so I eventually end up putting a dress on the thing, and just imagine he or she, probably, maybe, was just doing some robot boogie. I don't know what to think of it, like, well, most of my scribbles. It's a weird little thing, misaligned pretty much everywhere, and it seems like it doesn't care anyway, and as such, nor do I. I kind of like this silly thing, and I guess this is another one for my collection of robots. That army is slowly building up. One thing that did throw me off during the drawing was the issues that I kept on having with the ink flow. While most of the time the ink was flowing pretty darn good, maybe too good, through the nib, every now and then the nib was going into starvation mode and the ink was just stopping from flowing properly, which became a little annoying after a while. I'm not 100% sure exactly what the issue is, but based on my observation, my educated guess will be that it's either the converter that I'm using for the first time on this fountain pen or the ink, or basically a combination of both maybe. I'm not blaming this on the actual fountain pen because when the ink was flowing it was working great, and when I previously used it a couple of times actually in the past, I never had this specific issue, unless something happened with it since last time I used it. And I don't see what, because it was stored in a case safe from everything. What I noticed is that somehow the ink clings pretty tight on the walls of the converter when it was starting to ink starve, and then I was removing the barrel and starting to flick the converter with my finger a couple of times. The inks was finally falling at the bottom of the converter. No idea what is going on. First time I have this kind of issue with a converter from Sailor, and I am puzzled by it because the opening of the converter is pretty large, almost as large as the pilot converters. So in theory the surface tension should not be a problem with it, unless it's the ink and whatever chemistry it's in it. I need to try it in a different fountain pen and see if he has the same issue. So next week you might see me trying it again in a different Scribble with a different fountain pen. And just to be on the safe side of things, I guess I should also try the fountain pen with another ink just to make sure I rule out any issues with the section or feed. With that issue aside though, I have to admit that I kinda like the ink for sketching with. It has this lightness at the beginning when you start to draw that kind of makes you want to explore new lines without the fear to commit to something until you find the shape you want. I like that part of this ink. What I'm not 100% convinced on is when you finally build a lot of layers and you get to the point where the ink is fully saturated and you can't build any more layers on top of it. At that point, the ink starts to have a very purplish shine to it, and depending on the angle you are looking at it, that shine can be quite high. I tried to capture that on the video at the end when I was done, but not 100% sure how it will turn out. I like it, but not sure. Some more exploring definitely is needed with this ink, and like I said, I will probably try it again. Actually, you will see me bringing up my little sketchbook that I carry with me just to give the ink a try on a different piece of paper. The results were very similar, but it made me realize how much wet, well, between quotes, wet, this ink is and how much ink is dumped on the page. The thinner and smaller piece of paper of my little sketchbook was getting saturated and wavy after just a couple of strokes on the page. Because of that, I was not able to build it too much on that page, but the result seems to be very similar, so I don't think the paper matters that much on the shine of the ink. Interesting ink, that's for sure. Like I said, I will give it another try with another sketch before deciding if this one will be reserved for writing only. And while I had some issues with the flow, I did enjoy the Scribble for today and the fountain pen, and I am quite happy with my end results, even though it's not perfect. So I guess in the end, that's about it for me for today, at least for the blabbering part. It was a little bit of an adventure with this fountain pen. I still enjoyed using it. A little bit of a roller coaster of emotions here and there. But in the end, it turned out to be a fun night with a fun Scribble, and I'm happy for that. As usual, enjoy the rest of the time-lapse, and I hope I will see you next time. Wish you all the best and a wonderful day or night, wherever you are. Take care. Bye.